Hello, a very good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the webinar titled Digital Twins for Smarter Cities, jointly brought to you by GeoWorks, Bentley Systems, and Microsoft. I would like to welcome both our two speakers to turn on their camera, and we'll have a quick introduction on the two speakers that we have brought on board for this webinar today.
Hello, everyone.
So we have with us today Jakub Wachowski and Rahul Savdekar. A quick introduction on the two speakers, starting with Jakub Wachowski. So Jakub Wachowski is a Director of Success Advisory for APAC at Bentley Systems. For the last few years, Jakub has been working closely with the industry, academia, and the policymakers to improve the built environment sector in the UK, Europe, and the Asia Pacific through digital innovation. As a leading global advisor, he collected vast experience in championing initiatives, driving innovation, defining the information strategies, and managing change within a few of the Fortune 500 companies and for the major infrastructure asset owners internationally. He is a chartered member of the Professional Board of Engineers in Italy, a registered architect in the UK, and holds an MBA from the Imperial College London Business School. He is a regular speaker at the leading industry conferences and a guest lecturer at universities around the world. Welcome on board, Jakub. Our next speaker we have with us is Rahul Savdekar. Rahul is a Director, WWPS Asia Industry from Microsoft. Rahul is an accomplished global business leader. In his current role as a Director at Microsoft, Rahul leads federal and local government industry digital transformation solutions across Asia Pacific and Japan, helping many cities, governments to build and deliver smart solutions around connected governments, sustainability, smart cities, and urban mobility. He is a thought leader and a subject matter expert on technology for government and is frequent speaker at industry forums globally. He also has been featured in 50 Most Impactful Smart Cities Leaders, 2017, 18, and 20 global listing published by the World CSR Forum. Rahul is passionate about technology innovations for enhancing government operations and societal impact. Rahul holds a bachelor's in civil engineering, MBA in marketing, and has certifications from Wharton, INSEAD, Kellogg's, and London Business School. Welcome on board, Rahul. Good to have you on board in this webinar. Without further ado, let us kick off this webinar with Jakub, who will be presenting first. Jakub, when you're ready.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, all good to go.
Fantastic, okay. So thank you very much for this lengthy but kind introduction. So I will be talking today about the digital twins in the context of the cities. I will be also introducing something that we call national digital twins and referring to a couple of initiatives that are happening around the world. So generally, we all know that the future is urban. And we know that more and more population is living in the cities. And therefore, there is a big pressure on the cities, such as Singapore and other cities, especially the cities which have limited space, which we can, in Singapore, for instance, we can only go up or down, and we can optimize the current use of the city assets. And here the data shows that by 2050, about 70% of the world population will live in the cities. At the same time, what we see that is the cities are becoming more and more connected. For example, the citizens are connected between each other, the services are connected between each other, and also infrastructure assets are becoming more and more connected between each other. Bentley's focus in particular is around the infrastructure assets. Now, imagine a world where the so-called Internet of Digital Twins exists, where we have connected infrastructure across different assets. And this Internet of connected infrastructure really supports the citizens and the city. A world in which you can have various systems which are really connected, such as energy systems, water systems, road networks, and others that generate and consume data that is across each other's and help mitigate certain risk across the city, which I'll be talking about in a moment. So if you look at the different sectors here, I gave an example of the power sector, water sectors, or telecoms. You can see that we can connect, typically organizations start to connect those cities within the various systems. The key concept here in terms of a national digital twin is to connect the cities across the networks. And here we want to answer questions such as what happens when, for instance, a power network is broken, and how does one sector or like water systems affect other sectors like finance or power and vice versa. As an example, we can look at the transport network and look at, for instance, at the traffic levels and how much new traffic will be generated if we were to create new development in a particular area. And of course, the different data supports the decision maker in this process. Or at the micro level, let me just play this video here. At the micro level, we can look at how to alleviate, for instance, maybe congestion at a certain junction based on analyzing the traffic data, analyzing the consumption of the city assets, and potentially looking at rewiring the city network. Or we could also try to understand generally the citizen experience in the city and, for instance, look at how long does it take to go to a hospital. Or maybe we can look at disaster planning and start to try to prevent certain disasters, or maybe understand how flood or other situations in a city could affect the city and its different networks. Of course, the cities are continuously changing. Although about 99% of cities actually already exist. If you look at the infrastructure that we're building every year and the infrastructure that exists, we will see that 99% is existing, and we adding all the time, changing all the time to this infrastructure. So in this particular example, you can see how, for instance, a city of Helsinki is building an evergreen digital twin for looking at new interventions and bringing them together with an existing assets to make sure that we can understand better how the new interventions will affect the city. Also, what we see is that cities start to embrace technology. So this is an example of a use case of HoloLens 2 from Microsoft, where we see that cities start to become more responsive. And we can use things like augmented reality technology to provide the ability to interact better with the city, with the things at different levels. You can see we can interact with the city at a macro level, but also interact with the city at a micro level to understand much better what is happening around. What we also want to make sure is that cities became data-driven, data-informed. And here is an example of a water network which utilizes the digital twins for continuous monitoring of networks condition. For instance, we want to understand whether there is some issue with maybe an overflow in certain parts of a network or in tanks, and we can continuously monitor how the water flows. Nonetheless, to get there, we need to achieve the openness and federation and bring together different types of data. So, for instance, IoT, as Rahul was mentioning, and also possibly other data from possibly emergency services, or maybe data related to the particular infrastructure. And that's the reason why to supplement this strategy, we have actually opened up our core technology and published it on the GitHub for everyone to actually build on top of this technology. So if you're interested, just Google iModel.js. It's an open source baseline technology which you can use for building technology. Now, what are we actually talking about when we talk about connecting different data sources? So first of all is bringing data such as requirements data. So for instance, functional requirements such as how do we want the city to perform, also more spatial data, 3D data, GIS, object-oriented or documentation data. But at this, and here, when we talk about assets and objects, we talk about things like any objects of value, really. So maybe a pump, maybe a staff member, a service. At the same time, we want to bring data which is related to those assets. And here we can bring data from inspections or sensors. And the key idea here is to bring this data together, connect through an ecosystem, possibly bring together different digital twins, and also understand how change on one asset can affect another asset. And here is an example of such a federation approach where you can see that we're bringing together photos, photogrammetry, GIS data, mapping data, documents about particular assets, or even drawings in here, just to be able to make informed decisions or potentially make a more inclusive participation in decision making from various participants. The problem that we have, though, is that only about 1% of data is actually currently being leveraged and ready for analytics. And you will see that starting to structure your data is becoming more and more important. And the digital twin is really about bringing this physical world and the digital world together to be able to sort of make a more informed decision making and prescriptions towards actionable events within the real world. And typically when we talk about a ecosystem of connected twins, is all about possibly leveraging different data sets and not necessarily just bringing everything into one data sets and one digital twin. And hence the reason why we need to look at the digital twin on various levels. So you will see that we might have a component level digital twin, but then if we go up and up in scale, you have a national digital twin or even international digital twin. If you, for example, look at maybe high-speed rail, or networks which span across individual countries. Also, we need to look at this layering, right? So ultimately, it's about having this natural environment, social environment, and economic environment that are brought together, overlapped in context, and provide insights for various use cases. And a social and value infrastructure which we layer on top, such as, for instance, all your services, doctor services, for instance, or rail services, are then sort of overlapped on top of the other infrastructure. But to actually get to a system that works, we need to adopt, and I'm sort of running through some of the key concepts. I'm going to explain them in detail, but just wanted to expose you to a few concepts here. You can look up in the internet the Gemini principles. This is something that has been published in the UK Centre for Digital Britain, with whom we work quite closely in the UK. Those are the key principles on which we need to base our digital twins. Digital twins, first of all, need to have a clear purpose. We need to understand why we're executing or building a digital twin. They need to be trustworthy. So we need to be able to trust the data through security, through quality management of your data. And also, digital twins must be functional. So, the key idea here is how can we bring digital twins together? How can we federate? Who is curating those digital twins? And how those digital twins will evolve over time. And those principles actually have inspired an organization closer to Singapore to build on top of these principles and create some similar principles. And again, you can look up the frameworks for digital twin principles from the Spatial Information Council in Australia. So I'm not going to run through it, but again, I just want to expose you to some of these key concepts that will underpin your digital twin. So to summarize, there are sort of groups of use cases for the digital twins that I can see. First of all, it's all about bringing this strategy and planning concept. At the city level, we can look at future investment planning, where we can understand whether we want to develop certain area more than the other. We want to look at potentially certain optioneering to plan the transport, manage land, or maybe plan for water networks and so forth. Another key area for the use cases is managing the city assets. So here I can bring examples of optimizing future performance. So for instance, you might have a certain rail network or a water network, and you want to make sure that we predict performance, maybe optimize performance in the future. But on the other hand, we're dealing with current infrastructure, and we start to possibly monitor the existing assets, and maybe we move towards autonomous systems. For example, autonomous cars, but you can think of autonomous plants, autonomous building, and the direction is quite clear here. And the last use cases or the group is all about assurance. And again, if you look at examples here, I've mentioned some of examples before. You can look at things like emergency management. For instance, what happens if there is a fire in the city? What happens if there is a flood in the city? Or maybe it's a terrorism attack? How can we respond to these emergency situations? Or maybe you want to manage risk in terms of maybe even health risk in terms of a pandemic. How can we manage that, and how do we utilize infrastructure asset to respond promptly to such risks? So that's it from me. I will leave you with some final thoughts, maybe for a little discussion later on. So first of all, I understand, especially in Asia, but it's quite common across the globe, that not all the organizations and most of our organizations are a bit hesitant in sharing the data. And I feel to suggest here that by sharing the data across departments, across organizations and sectors, can yield exponential benefits. It's not just an addition. It's not just 1 plus 1. It's really an exponential value being brought by bringing different data together from across different sectors and organizations. At the same time, the digital twin enabled city will become generally a more livable city, will become more responsive to any needs from the citizens, whether these are the existing needs or the future needs, and ultimately will attract more talent and investments, and therefore future-proof the city itself. So thank you very much for the time, and I will give it back to Rahul.
Thank you so much, Jakub. Next speaker, we have Rahul. So Rahul, take it away.
Thank you, AZURE, and thank you, Jakub, for setting up such a amazing concept of digital twins and the whole concept around national twins. While I share my screen, let me know when everybody can see it, and I'm putting this into a presentation mode. Here you go. Can somebody confirm if you can see my screen?
We can see your screen. I'm just thinking, maybe can you, because the voice is quite low.
Yeah, the audio.
Yeah.
Again?
It's still a bit soft.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe closer to the mic. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Really grateful and really excited to speak to you all and present this whole concept of that we have from a Microsoft standpoint. My name is Rahul Savdekar, and I am a part of the worldwide corporate organization focused on government as an industry. And I've been instrumental in working with many cities across driving digital transformation and smart cities initiatives across Asia, Pacific, and Japan. So, without taking more time, I just want to walk you through a few of my thoughts around leveraging digital twins. And Jakob, in his initial presentation, definitely touched upon very critical aspects around digital twins in terms of how the digital and physical are changing. And what I want to also call out here right now is obviously when you really look at a city level digital twin, there are so much of complexities, right? Complex models around environments. You have so many sensors, so many data set. The data is mostly siloed, and it obviously integration becomes one of the challenges. How do you really look at the most modular building blocks and convert them into a seamless physical model, and creating a scalable model? I think scalability is very important here. And then obviously making sure that the changes that are happening in the real world are also reflecting in the real time on your digital twin. And this is primarily because I think consumers are really looking at the next level of real-time information and driving the digital to make sure that the physical is aligned completely. And there are so many aspects around that. You have mirrored systems, you have life cycle management, you have multiple connected sensors, and so on and so forth. But when we really look at considering today, emerging, and future, I think the ecosystem really changes accordingly, especially around connected assets, environments and ecosystems. So what I'm going to talk to you today is how do we really look at leveraging digital twins from a city and a nation standpoint, and look at some of the data examples around that. This is ultimately the vision that typically everybody looks at, that everything is connected, whether it is a connected grid, connected city, it's a connected building, whether it is a connected vehicle around all of the aspects from a city standpoint. So you have so many use cases, and definitely Jakub talked about a few of those use cases from three criteria that he highlighted. But from a digital twin standpoint, I think this is all leveraging the data, which is basically being utilized by all of these systems across to drive that real-time simulations across, and the insights that we need to really obtain from the digital twin models. When we really look at the connected digital twins, I think the use cases across the cities or nation could be very unique, specifically. And I think all of the examples around spaces are all good candidates from a digital twin standpoint. But I think most importantly, as it was outlined in the earlier presentation also, I think it's the models, the relationship between people, places, and devices really drive the efficacy of the digital twin. Extensible twin object models, how do you really create definitions? Do we have standard sensors which could be plug and play and which get absorbed by the digital twin model when you put a sensor in real life? I think those are the examples and areas where we definitely need to look at when you want to leverage the connected digital twins as a phenomena. And I think security is paramount here. How do we really create the security layer, and how do we make sure that security is forefront of everything that we drive as a part of the digital twin? I want to quickly take you through a quick small video. I deliberately tried to introduce a couple of videos so that we don't have to kind of go through multiple slides, but I think at least we see some real life content as well. So I just wanted to show you a quick video here which talks about...
The Internet of Things gives businesses unprecedented insights into their assets. As connected solutions continue to evolve, companies are looking to create comprehensive digital models of their entire environments to gain insights that drive better products, optimization of operations, cost reduction, and breakthrough customer experiences. Examples include buildings, factories, farms, energy networks, railways, stadiums, even entire cities. Yet modeling and creating a digital representation of an environment can be difficult for even the most sophisticated enterprises. Azure Digital Twins makes this easy. It enables customers to model an environment and then bring this digital twin to life, scalable, and secure. Businesses can connect assets such as IoT devices, as well as existing business systems to Azure Digital Twins. Azure Digital Twins helps break down silos that previously stood in the way of insights and provides a robust platform to build dynamic business logic on. Azure Digital Twins seamlessly integrates with Azure Data, Analytics, and AI services to make it easy to track the past and then predict the future, giving businesses the edge they need to meet the challenges they face today and tomorrow. Azure. Invent with purpose.
So as you can see, I think the use cases could be so manifold. I think the key here is to look at, integrating all of those data sets together. And when I really look at specific aspects around this integrated platform, the three things that come to my mind.
Rahul, just on can we try to speak up a bit louder, because I think it's a bit faint. Thanks.
Okay, I'll try speaking much more louder.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. Specifically talking about the digital twins as a platform, I think three things that come to my mind are around systems and contexts and processes around things, places, and people. So when we really look at the digital twins as a platform, I think most importantly, what we need to look at is how does really the data get captured across businesses, across cities, across various systems. How does that data really provide us insights through the synthesis of data from an analytical purposes, and how do we really look at those insights that we obtain from these cities, and specifically the data that is being created and generated across so many systems to fuel our simulation requirements. And obviously there could be so many use cases in the digital world around operations, around insights, and around experiences, specifically around remote monitoring, fraud detections, fault management, predictive maintenances, and so many others around occupancies and utilizations, and specifically with COVID-19, regulations in place, social distancing measures, and violations of rules around that. I think those possibilities around digital twins could be very, very limitless. It also is important to see how the physical world is gelling with the digital world, with so much of devices, spaces, and people really connecting from the systems and context and processes experiences standpoint. So it's basically a combination of so much of these factors which basically help you to derive the maximum value from the digital twin system. The second piece that I would talk about is around also the role-based access to the data from a national, because obviously even though there is one, let's say, city digital twin created, there would be different owners around those unique data sets, and how do you make sure that everybody has their own specific role-based access to the digital twin data from their own management, maintenance, and updation standpoint. We recently also kind of partnered and kind of launched the digital twins definition language, which is the most simplistic way to add components and systems as a part of the digital twins, and giving the industry a ecosystem around defining this on the GitHub through our open source initiatives. Some of those initiatives are available on the Microsoft as well as the GitHub websites. Feel free to ping me offline in case any of those interest you to go forward. We have been living this whole digital twins journey for quite some time, and as I can talk to you about the recent projects that we have taken up to modernize the entire Redmond campus that we have in the US. It's a very, very large campus. We are at this point of time building the whole platform on Azure Digital Twins. There are 1100 plus models in the DTDL with more than 50,000 plus kind of systems, actually sensor systems driving kind of transactions around that. So this is all about workplace management, employee experiences, and making sure that we take good care around COVID-19 response and the processes around that. Also, it has a BMS integration with space utilization and planning, which is again a large area. We are talking about almost about a 500-acre campus with more than 164 buildings, which is basically looking at almost 50,000 plus sensors, giving more than 2 million data points. There have been some interesting learnings from this model that we have been putting on digital twin simulations. One of the triggers that we recently were given to identify was there was a small exhaust fan which actually was burning the energy for across the year, and it kind of just switching that one trigger off saved almost about $80,000 of energy revenue that Microsoft has actually been paying. So insights like this, which help you leverage and kind of derive the actual quantitative value from the digital twins model. And as you look at that, more stories around the links. I'm going to be sharing this deck for you all to have this links as well to do a little bit more deep dive. We have been very fortunate to have partners like Bentley who have been helping in building these pieces. Recently, we also took up the responsibility of actually creating a digital twin for our Singapore office here, which is on the Cecil Street, just around Telok Ayer Street as well, corner of Cecil and Telok Ayer. So I just wanted to kind of quickly show you how does that really look like from a quick video, but I'll provide on the commentary as well. This is the Fraser Towers facility that we have across, and as you can see, this is a area where we is actually trying to look at multiple parameters across from 9th to 14th floor, from space management, energy management, and lighting perspective. Right now, what you are seeing is looking at power zones on the 10th floor, and how do you really look at multiple trends coming up out of this power zone. So you can select one area, whatever is your preference, and really look at the real-time usages and consumptions and savings around all of these areas. You can also look at specifically around occupancies and see what kind of occupancies does each of these floors have in terms of currently occupied, percentage occupied for how much time. Those kind of realistic, helpful insights to kind of help you drive your plan and process around that. There are also multiple options around the lighting and illumination systems that you can really go a deep dive as well. So these are some of the examples of the features that we have built as a part of the Fraser Towers digital twins as we go around working with multiple partners on this front. I just also want to kind of call out specifically our work with some of the other customers, especially the TBI Holdings in the UK, which is actually creating a 3D replica to monitor energy consumption and usage for carbon neutrality. I think carbon neutrality is also a very large topic, and Singapore also has a very large commitments toward carbon neutrality. All of these kind of areas definitely provide a good example of digital twins and how does really the digital twin help in energy conservation and monitoring. Another example that I wanted to give you is from one of the large digital twin projects that we did in Rotterdam in Europe. I just want to roll out a quick 2 minutes video for you to have a visibility around this.
The elevator is the nervous system of a building. We transport people, and transporting people is a very serious thing. So as an elevator company, we need to test the concept of elevators. Rottweil is called the village of towers, but now they have a real tower. I mean, a real tower. We are testing not only hardware, but we're also testing our thinking. For years, there was no change in this industry. With the help of Microsoft and Willow, we are in a different stage.
The Willow Twin is our feature platform. Partnering globally with Microsoft, we're looking at the whole city and how we can leverage AI, IoT, and cloud and bring it into one solution that's robust, safe, it's secure, and it's scalable.
What Willow does is provide a digital twin replica of the built environment to bring together the static information that's produced during the construction of these buildings and the live dynamic information as well. We're leveraging the Azure Digital Twins platform. Microsoft was a natural fit for that because of the flexibility and scalability that offered for the data storage component of it, as well as the embedded security features that were built into that data storage.
The digital twin of the building enables us to show and also do testing in a digital world and digital environment instead of the real world, to check the behavior of the system, to do simulations of the system, people flow analytics, and to come to a very robust result without doing physical testing. This is the first time that we have a complete building with all the infrastructure, everything what you find in a building.
There's over 15,000 live data points on that building. There's over 57,000 static data points, and I can find them at a click of a button. We're able to demonstrate on the tower what would happen in an emergency. Knowing that all the people are out and they're safe, this digital twin gives me as an owner visibility into the things that matter for me in an emergency.
And obviously, this is just one example of that use case, but I also want to kind of call out the Digital Twins Consortium and the work that a lot of partners are actually doing around this, including partners like Bentley, who are with us today, to contribute to the development of digital twins to a large extent. With this, I want to take a pause here and then open up for questions. But I think from a conclusion standpoint, I want to put in a couple of things. One is that when you really look at creating city or national level digital twins, the data sharing between various systems is the most critical aspect. So what's your data strategy when you really create the larger digital twin? Secondly, how do you really look at the policy environments around the cost sharings across multiple systems? For example, if a single digital twin is sharing across data across the power and the electrical systems along with the water systems, and they need to kind of really look at different examples of sharing those, what would be the revenue or a commercial model to share that data, as well as looking at intergovernment, interdepartmental budgeting across. And the third is obviously the role-based access, which is required for people to have access to their specific data, and making sure that we are putting security systems in across the place to protect the national or the city asset that has been created. I'll pause here and I'll hand it over back to AZURE and for the further proceeding of this webinar.
Thank you very much, Rahul. So we're going to move on next to the next segment, which is the panel. So I'd like to invite back again Jakub and Rahul. Okay. For the rest of the audience, I think if you have any further questions, do post your questions in the Q&A box while we have this panel session going on. Okay, thank you so much, Jakub. Thank you so much, Rahul. I think it has been quite an entertaining and informative presentations by both of you. I think you shared quite a bit about digital twins, what makes up a digital twin, what are the use cases, all the different use cases, and of course, some of the live examples of digital twins that are already existing today. Both of you mentioned about sharing and data. Okay, so ownership of the digital asset and who is responsible in ensuring whether it's accurate, whether it's updated, and what's in it for the owner to maintain such an asset. Is there an economic model that makes it worthwhile for a digital asset owner to share their data? We are talking about say a corporation that owns a lot of sensors and they've been collecting or harvesting a lot of data, and some of these data may be required by, say, another organization or the government, and this organization needs to maintain it. There are costs involved in terms of managing or storage of these large amounts of data, and there are also costs involved in providing kind of like a bridge or an API for the data sharing bit. So maybe I would like to open this up to both of you on what are the possible economic models, or what's in it for this organization to be able to want to share this data?
Rahul, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So, a couple of thoughts around that. I think there are no fixed economic models, as we can see from a defined framework standpoint. But from the experience of working with multiple smart city systems, I think these models are evolving. I mean, if you really look at the way Singapore's lamppost as a service platform is actually coming up, that's actually a very robust example of how the economics of data sharing and data monetization are actually coming on play, especially to make sure that it is profitable for the people who are really contributing to it. The second aspect is around also the cost of the data maintenance and sharing. I think if there are different departments, so should you charge for accessing the data? Should you charge for consuming that data? Should you charge for just providing that data? I think there are so many policy level interventions which really need to be looked at. But thirdly, I would say that there are also open data initiatives which basically be launched by the digital twin model owner, who could really look at creating various supporting applications to support on that, as long as it is an open data and it is not bound by any geographical and political as well as security restrictions. I think there are models like one of the examples that we see from a smart city standpoint is that most of the telco operators are now really thinking about creating their own network of environmental and other sensors, which they would offer to the cities as a subscription, as a service for all the services that they want to do. I'm sure when you really look at digital twins from a city standpoint or a nation standpoint, all of these models would really have very strong economical background and validation as well.
Yeah, and just adding to that, I think you also ask a question about the ownership of data and who owns the data, right? So again, I think it could be a number of models. So one model that Rahul mentioned is, the data generator captures data, but let's say it's a weather conditions, it's a simple to understand data, or temperature or vibration patterns, right? And then tries to sort of sell that data directly to the users who would require such data, and you might have service level agreements based on it. But generally, I think that in a context of typical infrastructure owner, the data collected from your own infrastructure, you typically would be owned by yourself. So in the same way that you are the owner of the physical assets, I believe that the owner of a digital asset, which is associated with that physical asset, will be the same. And generally, it should be use case driven, because you might be outsourcing the collection and the curation of such data based on the use case. So, for instance, if this is something about maintaining the particular digital twin, let's say there is a rail network, and you, as I mentioned before, maybe you are collecting data about the vibration patterns around the particular, let's say, rail, so who's going to do that? Well, you can either, it's as with any other service, you can either do it in-house, so you can basically have your own experts in-house who would install those sensors, curate the data about sensor, cleans the data, and provide data as a service to the other departments, or you can sort of make it a package and outsource it with certain confidentiality criteria. But generally, I think that it's use case driven, and it doesn't really matter whether you own the data or somebody else owns the data, as far as there are certain service level agreements, so to speak, that you can assure that this data is provided with certain continuity for, let's say, the next 2 or 3 or 5 years going forward.
Thanks for the insights. Now, the need for now we kind of know that yes, digital twin is the way to go. Every city needs a digital twin, or every organization needs a digital twin. From your experience of what you have seen being implemented, or you were involved in implementing such digital twins, have they been more operationally driven, or are they more strategically driven? Is the need because there is a operational problem that needs to be fixed quickly and immediately, or is it more of a strategic plan to have a digital twin that covers the entire business of that organization?
So let me start, and then Rahul maybe completes. So I think you cannot discern these two aspects. One is more like, I would say, bottom up. So you have a number of needs, issues, concerns on a daily basis, which might be, for instance, looking at the lens of operational efficiency and excellence. So therefore, you have a certain processes and workflow that you might want to optimize, and therefore you internally flag this as an issue and so drive this up towards the management. So that's truly I think it's predominant currently as what I see in the organization is mostly operational driven, but more and more I see there is a top-down approach at the same time. They're not necessarily meeting in the middle yet, but I see frameworks and foundations being laid in the organizations which embed strategies, which embed digital twin as their strategy. And you can see a lot of the times that engineering organizations are seeing it as an opportunity to provide an additional service. So there is something that I didn't show today because I would need to have a bit more time, but typically, if you look at the infrastructure life cycle, you have around 20% of a spend during the capital project, and then 80% of the spend is happening during the operational phase of the asset, and 100% of value is being generated in the operational spend of the asset. Right. So what I see is that there is a lot of engineering firms that are trying to build new services to the owners, and not only doing it as an operations service. So I operate and maintain the physical asset, but at the same time I operate and maintain the digital asset. So you have this duality, I think, that's happening. So to summarize, I see top down and bottom up, but I see a lot of the times they're not yet converging in the middle, right? There is not necessarily cohesive strategy. But there is foundation for as a strategy being laid down in a number of organizations.
No, I think that's really a great point, Jakub. Just to quickly add on that, my view is also very similar. That I think when you really look at digital twins, you can't just look at strategy or operations. I think you have to look at both together, because once you really have a fully operational digital twin model, you definitely want to use the model to plan and to kind of predict what's going to happen in future, which is more of a strategic management component versus the operational management component. Both of them, they will have their own predictive requirements and sources. But I think when you really look at a model from a city standpoint, I think the whole purpose is to build a robust strategy and making sure that there is a scalability, there is a sustainability initiative which comes across from the use of digital twin. I think that's the core and the crux of the system that needs to be built in.
Thanks so much. Now, just one, I think before we move on to questions from the audience, I think we have probably a couple of questions from the audience. Just one more question. Now, let's say an organization, say an organization is looking at seriously looking at implementing some form of digital twin strategy or digital twin system for managing some of their assets. What are the key components that this organization need to take note of, and what are the kind of I would say considerations like budget, timelines, and I think most importantly is you mentioned about I think both of you mentioned about open data, open standards. What are the frameworks, or what are the data standards that are available out there that an organization can actually start to do some research and refer to before they start to embark on such a digital twin initiative?
Jakub, would you like to go first?
Yeah, okay. Well, so first of all, I mentioned before that there is a certain number of principles that needs to be implemented, right? So I mentioned the principles of the purpose, making sure that whatever use case we are proposing and scenario, or whatever aggregation or combination of twins is we're proposing, is almost like an answer. But the key problem is, what's the question? So, we need to be able to provide the purpose. Ideally, the purpose is for the public good. So if you're talking at a city level digital twin, it needs to create value and also needs to provide insight. Ultimately, once the twin is let's say already created. The other principle, the trustworthiness. So again, we need to make sure that it's secure, open, and functionality. But I think in terms of the open standards, for me, it doesn't really matter what type of format is it, whether it's an IFC or DWG or some other type of standards coming from the plant world. I think the key concept here, and this is actually one of the fundamental components of the platform that we have open sourced, is that it brings any type of data together, as long as the schema is defined, as long as the actual attributes are well structured. So, and this is, I think, the key characteristic of a good, well-defined digital twin, is that you have this foundation of information management actually underpinning the digital twin. Because ultimately, I think the most difficult part is really to get their data structure right, to make sure that the data governance is correct. So this is why standards such as ISO 19650, for instance, for information management, which is really just an underlying layer where you start to require the right data for the right purpose, the right attributes. You have the governance structure where you know who is going to give you the data ultimately, and then we can leverage this data through a visualization, aggregate the data, but the data needs to be there. So I think that's for me, that's a fundamental layer. And then we could probably talk another hour about the different frameworks, but what I suggest is that, first of all, you need to have a strategy in place. We need to have the right KPIs in place. We need to look at the people component, how people would adopt a particular digital twin, and then we look at the actual use cases, the workflows that we want to adopt. And just one last highlight on the strategy is, is it going to be part of your competitive differentiation, or is it just your core foundation sort of service that you need to do anyway, otherwise you're going to become obsolete in the next 2 to 5 years?
No, I think these are all great points, and I think you spoke my mind as well on the larger components. Definitely, we need to take in consideration on what is the real problem that we are trying to solve with this digital twin. So what's really the problem, what's sort of our objectives, and how really are we meeting our KPIs. The second is definitely we need to have really start looking at a robust data strategy. And when I say data strategy, it means a couple of areas: the schemas, the metadata management pieces, the whole the seamless integration pieces, data sharing pieces, and even policies. I think this is really a very important aspect for any organization. You need to have your own policy structure around data governance, data management, data sharing, information management, information security in place to really have a robustness. And I think most importantly, for all of the digital twin models, you need to have a very robust security strategy in place, which basically defines how do you protect, detect, and respond to various security threats which come out to your data models internally and externally. I think these are, core functions that anybody who's looking to create a digital twin model should really look at. The last point I would mention is a lot of people think about this as a one-time activity, but technically it is not, right? It's a continuous updation, and that's the beauty of having a real-time digital twin model. So how do you really create a example of a data governance, data sharing strategy, which will keep feeding in the data from various systems, ecosystems, and then really make your model sustainable over a period of time so that people see value in using that? I think that's the crux of the larger digital twin creation strategy.
Thank you so much, Jakub, Rahul. Let's move on to, I think we have a couple of questions from the audience. We have one question from Mari Rajan. Over-reliance on IoT seems to be risky or vulnerable. How do you all plan to manage this risk?
I can quickly take that. I think it's anything related with IT typically comes with its own share of risk, but I think the key is to manage it with the right set of security standards and protocol, and having a robust security strategy in place to make sure that we are really able to kind of create a fair as well as a risk-free environment. As with, I wouldn't say risk-free, with a lot of reduced risk to work around.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it's because ultimately the data will help you to make informed decisions, right? And the decisions will execute actions. So you can have a degree of automation from data feed to an action, could be semi-automated or more automated. And I think as far as you're building in enough redundancy, and also you're building in the default action if the data feed is not coming in, right? So I think that type of governance should be in place, that you actually make sure that you're not completely reliant of the data. You are 99% of the time, but the time that the moment where the data is not there, what do you rely on? But I think this question actually has been answered many years ago by aviation industry. I don't see, airports not using the advanced systems in control towers just because they cannot trust their data. I mean, that's almost like, for me, an answered question. They have been relying on data from sensors, from airplanes, from radars for years and years and years. And the accident rate has just gone down versus not relying on this data, right? And there are also default, let's say, emergency situation where it all stops working with enough redundancy to make sure that the planes can land safely, nonetheless.
Thank you. Any more questions? Is there any more questions from the audience? Okay, so we have one more question from same person. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry, that was a comment. Okay.
There is a question about what the most significant upcoming digital twin initiative that the government will be embarking upon this year. So because you guys are from SLA as well, maybe you have some additional insights, but I definitely see, first of all, in Singapore, governments are building this foundation layer in terms of information management framework. You will have now platforms that are being tested and provisioned to actually build this information foundation. And I think from then you will have the digital twin, use cases flourishing afterwards. But as an example, Digital Underground is one of them from SLA, where there is a number of, say, research projects that are helping to understand how can we build the foundation and underground layer of information management system. Anything else, Rahul, that you see happening in Singapore?
About Singapore government, but one of the things that I definitely want to say here is that recently I heard that the Japanese government is actually thinking about creating a digital twin of 50 cities in Japan, including Tokyo, which is pretty large, and I think that's one of the largest digital twin initiative I've ever heard so far.
50 cities, wow.
50 cities, that's huge. That's a huge undertaking, definitely. Okay, so I think we definitely had a good session. Thank you very much, Rahul. Thank you so much, Jakub, for participating in this webinar. For the audience, thank you so much for joining us today. If you do have any questions later on that you wish to pose to Rahul, either Rahul or Jakub, I think you can reach both of you through email.
Yeah, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think we'll have both your emails on the chat. Simin, if you don't mind, just type out both Rahul's and Jakub's email on the chat. And
okay,
then,
sure.
yeah, and then just leave it on. So once again, we are very glad and honored to have both Rahul and Jakub in this webinar session. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good day ahead, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.